Hey guys, and welcome back! In this video, I want to start discussing various mechanics introduced with Magic's latest set, Eldritch Moon. We've gotten some truly unique new ways to play our favorite game, and it's best if we understand them thoroughly. Today, let's talk about the complex and somewhat frightening mechanic, Meld. Meld is a revisioning of double-faced cards we've seen both in Shadows over Innistrad and the original Innistrad block. But it's far more complex and tricky to accomplish. Let's take a look at a common run-of-the-mill Meld card, Graph Rats. This standard 2-1 rat for 1 generic and a single black isn't anything special, but still has a lot of text. That text reads, at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you both own and control Graph Rats and a creature named Midnight Scavengers, exile them, then meld them into Chattering Hosts. With Meld cards, you'll always need 2 different cards to activate the mechanic. How and when they activate can vary, however. With Graph Rats here, you need both the cards out, then wait till the beginning of your combat phase. For others like Hanweir Battlements, you need to pay an activated cost. So always make sure you know how and when you're able to meld cards. Turning our attention back to the example card here, you'll notice some traits all Meld cards will have. They'll each have this symbol of Innistrad's moon in the top left corner, and a little indicator of the power and toughness of the creature they'll eventually meld into. Now, since Meld takes 2 cards, let's look at the second half of Graph Rat's Meld requirement. This is Midnight Scavengers, a 3/3 human rogue for 4 generic and a single black. When Midnight Scavengers enters the battlefield, you may return target creature card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to your hand. As you can see, Meld cards will always have one side describing how and when the cards can meld, while the other will simply, in parentheses at the bottom of the card, indicate which card it melds with. Once both these cards that you own are out and under your control, you can activate their Meld ability. In terms of Graph Rats, this happens at the beginning of your combat phase. At that time, you exile both Graph Rats and Midnight Scavengers, then you meld them, meaning they come back into play flipped and as a completely new creature. Chattering Host. This is your new Meld creature. Meld creatures are made up by 2 previous cards being flipped and stacked horizontally of each other. You can tell it's a Meld creature, well, because it's 2 cards forming one, and by the full Emrakul symbol at the top left corner. When the meld's completed, the formed creature acts just like any other creature would. It can be targeted, enchanted, destroyed, exiled. Just think of it as one giant card. In this regard, it's very similar to traditional flip or transform cards we've seen in the past, but there are some significant differences. When a Meld creature is destroyed or exiled, that's it. Both the cards forming the creature are now either destroyed or exiled as well. When this happens, the Meld creature disappears and returns to its 2 separate cards. You don't have a card called Chattering Host in your graveyard. It will split and you'll have a copy of Graph Rats and Midnight Scavengers there instead. When a Meld creature is exiled, again, Chattering Host just vanishes and the 2 cards that formed it return, faced up and in exile instead. Same can be said when the Meld creature is bounced back to its owner's hand. They get the original 2 cards and will have to play them each over again. Likewise, for cards that can free a card from exile or summon it from the graveyard, you'll only be allowed to pick one, not both. If the Meld creature is sent to exile or your hand for just the turn, via cards like Long Road Home, the process remains. When it's time to return the 2 original cards from exile, they're placed onto the battlefield separately, not melded. And in the case of Long Road Home, each of the cards will have a +1/+1 counter on it. With this scenario, it's pretty safe to say that the 2 cards that return to the battlefield will meld together again eventually. But it's nice to know that they don't return already melded. Additionally, Meld cards require that you actually own the cards in order to meld them successfully. This is meant to prevent situations where you own Graph Rats, but gain control of an opponent's Midnight Scavenger using something like Malevolent Whispers, for example. You won't be able to meld your Graph Rats with your opponent's Midnight Scavenger just because you currently control both of them. You need to actually own them as well. Meld also won't work with tokens. These need to be real cards. So that means copies of Graph Rats won't meld with your real Midnight Scavenger, and vice versa. It's just a way to stop cheesing out a bunch of strong creatures. And as a final note, Meld creatures don't technically exist except on the battlefield. This is crucial to a lot of points people are making about Meld, thinking they can fetch out the Meld form of Brisela, Voice of Nightmares, with cards like Spawnsire of Ulamog or Coax from the Blind Eternities. It just doesn't work. Meld cards are physically made from the cards that form it. You can't fetch a card that you don't actually have the single card to. The artwork is on the backs of the 2 Meld cards, so unless you can fetch them both and activate their requirement, you can't cheese it from your deck. Not to mention, Bruna the Fading Light and Gisela the Broken Blade aren't even Eldrazi, they're Angel Horrors, so you can't even fetch them with those cards. Anyway, that's the gist of the new mechanic Meld coming in Eldritch Moon. It's a unique way to fuse cards together, forming even bigger and scarier threats on the board. Although it takes some effort to pull off, the end result is surely worth it. Let me know what you guys think about Meld in the comments below. What did I miss about this new mechanic, and are you excited to try it out? If you enjoyed the video, consider throwing it a like and subbing to the channel to stay up to date on all the latest Eldritch Moon news, spoilers, and lore. Again, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.